All right. So this was announced today, January 25th, but these bans don't go into effect on Arena until Thursday, January 27th. In Standard, they are banning All Runs Epiphany, Divide by Zero, and Faceless Haven. So they're banning Epiphany because they're tired of the turns deck. And I kind of get it, especially with that Vanic Iteration. I don't really think this does too much, though. I think these decks can, like, the decks that play Epiphany can also just play Hullbreaker Horror. So they definitely need to ban something else. I'm not sure Divide by Zero is the correct hit, but Divide by Zero is a good hit because Divide by Zero makes it so that Leer is less powerful. The issue with the thing with Divide by Zero was it allowed you to play Leer, Disciple of the Drowned, and still counter spells. But the big card also in Standard at least, is very much Expressive Iteration. Hitting Expressive Iteration would have been a big deal, but so is Divide by Zero. I believe hitting these two will make us go back to the old Izzet deck. And the old Izzet deck was basically just, do y'all remember the Galaseth, Prismari, and Goldspan Dragon deck? With some counterspells with like Salt Cummings and some Windfalls here and there. So I think Izzet can revert back to that. And that is not like a bad thing. But that deck also did play Faceless Haven, which we won't have access to. That's fine because they will have Hall of the Storm Giants and they'll have like one or maybe two Hullbreaker Horrors. So Izzet Dragons will come back, but Izzet Dragons coming back is actually kind of nice because with the banning of Epiphany and even Divide by Zero to an extent, it brings back mid-range decks, especially with the banning of Haven. Like the banning of Haven is obviously very good in the mono-white aggro decks or the mono-green aggro decks. And Haven has like rewarded players for going monocolored. So banning this actually makes board wipes more viable. So things like Meathook Massacre, Doomscar, whatever, it's actually strong. It's actually a little better. Of course, you still have like Den of the Bugbear, Hive the Eye Tyrant, etc. So the Haven ban also helps out the again the mid-range decks. So now we can play things like Soul Shatter again. Soul Shatter should go back up if Goldspan goes back up as well. But removal also matters. And I think that should help the mid-range decks come back and fight the aggro decks like Mono White or Mono Green or whatever. What have you. And if you do craft these, if you craft the Haven and Epiphanies before the 27th, you will get 4 Mythic Wild cards and 4 Rare Wild cards. So if you play Alchemy or even Historic, these cards are still legal in Alchemy and Historic. They're just like nerfed a bit. Overall, I am interested to see what the Standard is going to shape up to be. I still think it's going to be a very big contender, which speaks a lot about these bannings. The fact that you ban 2 blue cards and Izzet will still be like a massive deck just speaks of the power of how much Izzet has and had. Like Iteration is a disgusting card. Expressive Iteration, Galvanic is powerful. Windfall is also powerful. Goldspan Dragon is extremely powerful as well. So, and also Izzet has one of the better the module cards, the Jwari Disruption and the Spikefoot Hazard, which also is pretty huge. That's my thoughts on Standard. I am kind of excited for Standard for these bannings, but I am more excited for Neon Dynasty. More excited for Neon Dynasty when that comes out. All right, then for Legacy, they banned Ragavan, Nimble, Pilferer. Honestly, I haven't played Legacy in a minute, so this ban doesn't really affect me. But I can see how this card's annoying. I've seen it in Modern, which is strange to me because I feel like Legacy has more ways to deal with Ragavan. Like Legacy has like days, right? But I guess Daze also protects Ragavan. Well, you also have Force of Will and other ways to deal with it. So I don't know. I don't have much information about the legacy banning of Ragavan, but you know, more power to it. I am. If you know me, you might know that I'm not a fan of 1-drops that do 1,000 things. I think Magic needs to buff cards that cost more than 1 or 2 mana, especially if you intend to keep Lurrus around. If your goal is to keep Lurrus around, you should really buff the cards that cost more than 2, because right now Lurrus is heavily played, and cards like this that reward you like so much just for 1 mana is kind of absurd, in my opinion. Historic, they're banning Memory Lapse from Suspended. I think this means we get wild cards back too, right? We get 4 rare wild cards in Historic for Memory Lapse. And then Teferi, Time Raveler, has been rebalanced and unbanned. They give you the reasonings of why they're banning Epiphany. You don't really need to read this. The reasoning of banning Epiphany is because they've let it dominate enough in Standard, and now they're no longer selling packs. So they're fine banning Epiphany now because they know it's too good, but Hullbreaker Horror can take Epiphany's place. However, they will not ban Hullbreaker Horror because it's still in one of the newer packs, one of the newer sets. When time goes on more, they'll probably ban Hullbreaker Horror too. But this is basically what's happening. Epiphany has essentially sold packs, so has Faces Haven. They've been problems for a while, but they've sold their shit, so now we can ban them. And now the big changes is going to be Alchemy. So they're saying here, since Alchemy's launch, it's supposed to be, the format has been diverse. I agree with that. They're keeping an eye on it, and they want to keep it fresh and exciting for everyone. Their goal with Alchemy is when someone sits down to play Alchemy, it's going to be a fun format to play, or there's something new. That's their goal. The only issue I have is like, I know like it's kind of hard to give back wildcards. So here they're saying we rebalance Teferi Time Raveler, an updated Alchemy version will be legal and historic. In the future, we'll be looking for similar opportunities to rebalance and unban cards currently in the historic ban list. I hope they look at Field of the Dead as well, with the understanding that we have no intention of rebalancing iconic cards with significant Magic history, like Brainstorm. This, I have no idea why. Like, what does a card being iconic have to do with rebalancing it? Like nothing, right? Like, why? Who cares? Just give us fucking Brainstorm. Like, if you want to make Brainstorm playable, Brainstorm is perfectly playable at 2 mana. Make it 2 mana and let us play with it. Like what? I don't know. Personally, I don't agree with this. I don't care about fucking like iconic or cards that have been out forever. I have the same feelings about this as I do the reserve list. I don't care about catering to people that have 6,000 dual lands or that like Brainstorm, and changing Brainstorm is going to be annoying. Like, I just don't get that logic, but sure. Anyways. And then they say, and before you ask, you to keep your wild cards from the original banning. I think this is a joke. I don't get it. You'd keep your wild cards from the original banning from Teferi Time Raveler. Oh, because I get it. I get it now, because we always ask for wild cards to be. Well, we always ask because, hey, you're rebalancing some cards. Can we get some wild cards back? They're saying, well, we're unbanning this card, but you get to keep the wild cards. Okay, but you're also rebalancing 18 cards. Like, I don't understand that. I don't understand this. Like, you made Alchemy cards all rares and like mythics. There are very few uncommons. And this joke is in bad taste. I don't think you should really say this. This is not in good taste. Like, anyways, I don't agree with that at all. Like your community is like complaining about something, and we're just gonna say, yeah, Remember we banned Teferi and we gave you wild cards? Don't worry, we're not taking them back. All right, well, your economy's kind of shit. So how about you fix the economy, or even like give us a decent dust system so that when we rebalance cards, like in Hearthstone, when a card's rebalanced, you have like a window to get full dust from it, right? You have like a window to like dust the card and get the full amount from it. We don't have that in Arena, and it's kind of annoying because we're stuck with eight fabled passages or something ridiculous. So, but yeah, we'll just take a jab at the player base and say, don't worry, you have to keep your wild cards. All right, well I still have like 12 fabled passages. Can you take those back? Give me wild cards. Do not make a jab at your fucking consumer base. This is annoying. Anyways, moving on. I'm done. Rant over. Card buffs. All right. So I'm glad they are buffing cards. Overall, I wish they would buff share the buffs throughout cards, not just buff one archetype. Essentially, what they've realized is they've made the D&D set really bad for competitive play. So they're going back and they're buffing all the adventure shit in hopes that adventures become a deck. So let's see what they did. So the Archlich removed opponent's option to sacrifice a creature on the attack trigger. So they no longer have an option to sacrifice a creature. So now it says when this thing enters the battlefield, if you haven't completed Tomb of Annihilation, return it to your hand and venture into the dungeon. Whenever the Archlich attacks, create a number of 2/2 black zombie creature tokens equal to the number of opponents you have. Remove the option to sacrifice a creature on the attack trigger. What was the option before? I don't even know. What, they sack a creature instead of... I don't even see it anymore, so I have no idea what's the card even do before that? Opponent could sack and you don't get a zombie. What if we made them sack and we got a zombie? That'd be cool. Maybe playable then. Anyways. Assemble from parts. Lowered overall cost. Now requires 2 black mana. Okay, so this is kind of nice. This is a buff to this card. Basically like reanimation style. If you have a way to discard something on turn 1, which we really don't, but you know, if you did. Not in historic. I mean, not in Alchemy. In historic we do. But this is kind of exciting for historic. You can like Faithless Looting, discard a Toxrill or whatever, Platinum Angel, then turn 2, target it, right? And then next turn, basically do the same. Basically exile it. I like this card too because basically you exile the card. And like, so basically you put this on a Platinum Angel or Sarah's Emissary, right? And you make the token, the card goes back into your deck. And if you draw the card again, you can like discard it again and then do it again. And I like that. That's kind of cool. Hopefully this makes this card playable because this card's pretty sweet. I'm not sure if it will be, but I like buffing this card because this will be a fun one to brew around. You cannot do it instant speed. You can only activate it as a sorcery. Last clause is a sorcery, so no. Blood Rage Alpha increased toughness by 1, and now has a bigger butt, so now he can like fight better. That's fine, sure. Not a big deal. We'll take it. Cloister Gargoyle, and also I want to say the bigger butt doesn't matter. This lets you fight things like Tovlar or the Pack Leader or Elite Spellbinder, and it lives. So that is a pretty big deal and a welcome addition. The Gargoyle now costs 2 mana from 3. It's an 0/3 instead of 0/4. I believe it seems like I think they've tested these cards because the adventure cards I feel like they've changed really well. Because they buff the toughness, because they probably realize this can be a 3/3 beater pretty quickly in these new adventure decks. So this seems like a good change. And they said earlier that the adventure cards were kind of clunky at 4 mana and 3 mana, so they lowered some. So having some 2 mana options is nice for those decks, of course. Dungeon Descent. God, they basically made this card come into play untapped, and instead of costing 4 mana to tap, it only costs 1 mana. Like, look how much they had to do to make this card playable. And it's a rare. I want to say I'm glad for the change. I am just baffled by how they got it so wrong in the beginning. Maybe they're afraid of limited, I guess. I guess it's probably a bomb and limited. But that's a lot. Anyways, regardless. Nice buff to the card. This card actually seems playable in the adventure deck now. Alright, the Planeswalker, Eliwick. She's the same, except she can ultimate faster. Her ultimate is -6. This card was always like fringe minus playable. It's probably playable in the adventure deck now. The reason this card wasn't playable before because it was because the adventure deck just didn't exist. There was no reason to play this adventure into the dungeon if this card was the only card venturing into the dungeon anyways, right? So I think again that these cards should help the adventure deck because they've changed a lot and they test this format. So this this seems like a good change for that deck. Fate's Reversal. Don't really get this one. This is whatever. It's fine, I guess. So instead of 2 black, 1 black, 1 colorless, 1 black, return 1 target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, venture in the dungeon. Whatever. It's not a big deal. Not a fan of this one. Find the Path now adds 2 mana of any color instead of being 2 green. This should have been this way from the beginning, but again, thanks for the buff. We'll take it. But I'm not sure. These cards usually aren't that great anyways, though, so I'm not really sure this is playable either. These cards are usually good if they like draw you a card, or they do something else. All right, Puppet Razor, 4 mana, 3/3. Now it's a 3/4. I don't think the reason this card wasn't playable was because of its toughness. I don't think that was why. It shows what doesn't play. I don't think it's because of its toughness. But again, a buff does help. Lets it block better as a 4-drop. Can block some creatures like the wolves and stuff. So again, it's a welcome addition. Yes, if they change this card to like a zombie cleric, it'd be playable as well. PP drop. It costs 2 mana now. This is playable. So basically, it gives a creature -2/-2. It's a kill spell. It's a slow one. Lets you venture into the dungeon. And if you complete a dungeon, it becomes -5/-5. So it basically becomes a dismember. A dismember for 2 mana. It also ventures into the dungeon later. Seems like a solid removal for your adventure deck now. Triumph Adventure was also, I think it was always fine. Increasing it to a 2/1 from a 1/1 does speed up the clock a little bit. But I think that little bit does help a lot because now with the Paladin, this will be a 3/2 death touch, right? And so it'll be pushing even more damage through. I think this card was fine before, but this little bump, these little bumps on all these cards, I think probably makes this archetype playable, or seems that way. And that's why they buffed a bunch of cards by a little bit. However, I wish if they were going to buff like cards like Cosmos Elixir or Druid class, they'd buff them more because those cards don't go in one particular deck. They essentially they are cards to build around. Yes, it is also harder to chump block with creatures now because it can kill 2 of them, so it's basically unblockable essentially at this point. Because when it's attacking, it gets Death Touch and First Strike. All right, Divide by 0. This is banned in Standard. In Alchemy, it is not banned. Instead, now it does the same thing. However, you don't learn unless the thing that was the thing you bounced was 4 or less. I think this is still a great card in Alchemy. It's still playable. Not being able to learn does hurt it, but that being said, it's like Fading Hope. Fading Hope bouncing something that costs 5 or more is like you're gonna scry. So I think this is a big hit, but it's still playable. Again, especially early on in the like against like Town Razor Tyrant or the black-red deck hitting their Crypt Connoisseur or their Brushstroke. Still very relevant. The curve for for Alchemy isn't really that high outside of control decks, so 5/0 still seems decent. Obviously, it's a huge hit to it. It's not as good as it was, but it's still playable. This is a huge nerf. Now, this one got hit hard. This one got hit really hard. So Fearsome Whelp is now a 1/1, and instead of triggering at your end step, making all your dragons cost 1 less, it now triggers on your upkeep. So this gives the opponent or the other player time to untap and do something. Because usually what was happening was if the Dragons player was on the play, if they played the Whelp, you had to have like a Spikefield Hazard, a Devil's Play, or a Fading Hope, something to kill the Whelp. If you didn't, the ability triggered on your turn if you killed it. If you like abraded it on your turn, it didn't matter. The ability already triggered. And usually like one or two triggers of this card is game over. This nerf is really big though. It's pretty big deal. They did give it haste. Whatever. Haste doesn't really matter, but you know what? You know, that is a huge nerf, so giving it haste I don't think helps it that much, but sure, why not? To be fair though, I think this card should have been this way to begin with. Triggering at end step is pretty freaking brutal, so Dragons will still be strong, and if Dragons is not strong, Town Razor Tyrant will still be good. Hullbreaker Horror. Remove, this spell can't be countered. Alright, well, doesn't matter too much. In any deck that's not control, against control, I guess this makes your, yes, like I said, makes Disdainful Stroke stronger or more playable. If you're not playing control, this still does the same thing, it just kills you. But yeah, so now control finishers still have Hall of the Storm Giant. This card's still fine though. Like even in controls as a finisher, it's still solid. The Captain also got a huge nerf, which it kind of needed if I'm being honest. But the nerf now is the ability does not trigger unless you cast it. Right? Yeah, so you can cast it from like exile or whatever, but as long as you cast it. If you blink it, it will not trigger the effect. If you copy it, if you clone it from like glass pool make from like the deck, it won't copy it. If you cast a clone from your hand, that works, but you can't cast clones from your or see clones and keep going. So Captain's pretty much dead. I actually don't think this card is dead at all. I think this card is still a great top end for. Still a very solid top end for the white decks. Like it's just balanced now. It's just a white Coco and what it should have been. Like this card getting Elite Spellbinder is still very powerful. This card getting Adeline is powerful. Getting Radiant, whatever is still good. It's still a good card. It's just not absurd with Mimic and Soul Herder. You just can't blink anymore. It's still a very powerful card though. You just can't like blink it or bring into play with the cleric thing, the Pyre of Heroes, which is still completely fine. This card definitely needed that change. I know it's annoying if you craft this card, but this card is still playable, and it really should have been this way to begin with. But here we are. Lear's fix now is the spells can only be played on your turn. this stops him from being, and this is such a huge and good nerf for this fucking card, because this card is so obnoxious. God, it's so obnoxious. So now your opponent can have like these Fading Hopes and divide by zeros, and then you untap. You're like, okay, I'm gonna try to kill Lear, and they're like, nah, I got 4 cards in my graveyard. I'm gonna counter them anyways. So, and what's crazy is I think this hurts Lear. This hurts Lear, obviously, but Lear is still very, very playable. You can still like protect him with the cards in your hand. Even playing Lear, if you're able to cast one or two spells afterwards, like Lear into Duress, it's still a giant Snapcaster Mage that if you untap with, you get to keep doing your thing anyways. It's still very powerful. I still think you'll see play. It's just not as powerful as it used to be. I think that's fine. It gives other decks a chance as well. I love so like I feel like Lear might become now like maybe a discard deck, right? So Lear works better now with like things like Duress, check for traps, works better with like go blank or removal like a Braid. It forces you to do stuff on your turn, and I like that. It's not like, okay, well I have 10 mana, I played Lear, you're dead. And so the next nerf was to Sanguine Brushstroke. The Brushstroke actually wasn't nerfed that much. The only thing that got changed now is when you sacrifice a blood token, each opponent loses 1 life. They don't gain life. This was done to help support the other aggro decks to basically kill them. Honestly, I don't know if this is good. This is even good enough. Like, this nerf is like still a lot of life lost, and you still gain life from Mihawk Massacre. You still gain life from Blood Artist. So like the only thing that hurt was like the blood token life. It's still a solid nerf. The card's still very playable. And they say here they nerf this instead of Mihawk Massacre because they don't want to impact Historic. I like that they are doing this. So if they can help it, they're trying to not impact Historic, right? And I actually like that. And they're actually now, because of Alchemy, they're looking at Historic cards, and some of them that they said they'll unban and just like nerf them. So I kind of like that too. So Alchemy is having somewhat of a not just negative effect on Historic, but a positive one. And I personally like that. Town Razor. So now the R got capitalized. It used to be uncapitalized, now it is. And now it only hits non-basic lands to target as a target restriction. I mean, no, very few decks play monocolored decks. Like, I don't know. This card is still obnoxious, still very powerful. You still play it main deck. Maybe you cut it if you're playing against mono white, sure, because Haven. But they still have Haven. They still have like other lands that you can town raise. So this card is, I don't know. I can't remember the last time a Town Razor Tyrant was cast against me, and all I had was basic lands. So still powerful. Still very powerful. It also shuts off again. Still shuts off creature land and stuff. All right, this is the change they made. For Historic, they have unbanned Teferi, and they have nerfed him and buffed him in a way. So he's now 4 mana. Starting loyalty is not 4, it is 5 instead of 4. And the static has changed. Basically, the static used to be your opponent can't cast spells at instant speed. They basically can't cast anything while anything's on the stack. So basically, everything's at sorcery speed. And that ability kind of gutted a lot of cards. Now it's your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. Can't cast spells during your turn. So it's basically a white effect like Grand Abolisher or a Silence or whatever on your turn. Actually like this change. I like this change. I like that it's unbanned. I like that it's been nerfed. Because honestly, I think with this text, Teferi can be used for good. I think like Teferi used to be a very good card to brew around. Like if you had a brew and you could put Teferi in your deck, it was super sweet because you were able to like protect your combo or your strategy. Like if you're playing like Flooded Tears and you want to Flooded Tears into Omniscience or whatever, Teferi was always like a solid way to do that. And now it still is without crippling other cards like, you know, like it says here, Finale Promise, Dreadhorde Arcanist. Also doesn't shut down Emergent Ultimatum anymore either. This card seems sweet, and I'm actually excited to play this card in Historic. I think it's going to help out. It's a control card, but it's going to help non-control decks more than control decks, and I actually love that. So this is a great weapon to use against the other control decks. So awesome, sweet PogChamp. And I think that's it for the bans and rebalancing. One thing I want to end on. I just want to say that I hope they go back whenever they make Alchemy cards. I hope they buff or make a Land Matters theme. Right now, I feel like a lot of the Alchemy cards they've made, the big ones have been draw spells. Everything has been like low cost and low the ground to make them playable. I understand, but I would love to see like some big mana stuff. Something worth ramping into that comes, because usually Alchemy cards are stronger, right? New ones seem to be stronger. The Alchemy format has very strong Alchemy cards played in it, so I would love to see a Alchemy card that is worth ramping into. So that's my only thing. Make ramp decent again, at least. And I'd love to see Field of the Dead unbanned and Historic. Unban Field of the Dead and give it, you know, make it legendary or whatever you have to do to make it see a little bit of play.